from Relay FM, this is Connected, episode 150. Today's show is brought to you by Squarespace, FreshBooks, and Pingdom. My name is Mike Hurley. I am always, as always, joined by my co-hosts Stephen Hackett and Federico Vitici. Gentlemen, I would like to wish you our happy nature anniversary.
Is that what it's called? And
That's what it is. I looked it up. The 150th anniversary is nature.
Yeah, I think that's kind of sad because it implies that only nature can live up to 150 years together with other nature.
Well, I just think, what else is there, right? Like, looking on the Wikipedia page, there isn't any other terms.
Maybe.
It ends at 150, like nature. The nature anniversary is the last one. Because, like, how many things get to have a 150th anniversary, right?
Maybe sea turtles or some other big animals that live for a long time.
They're part of nature, really.
Yeah, but it could be called the turtle anniversary instead of the nature anniversary, you know?
But then I assume as well, though, right? Like, how many people are alive to keep track of it? You know, like, it starts to really break down past 70, which is why at 70 is the Platinum Jubilee. Then there's nothing until 150, which is nature.
It implies that more turtles are keeping track of the other turtles that are together. So it creates a whole ecosystem of turtles keeping track of this very specific anniversary. Yeah.
I'm just going to say, I don't think it implies that. I think that is is something you have come to appreciate. I don't think that there is any implication about turtles anywhere in this anniversary page of Wikipedia.
Like a whole society of turtles keeping track of this anniversary?
No.
Yeah,
that isn't it.
You are mistaken. It's totally a thing.
I've looked it up. Yes, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, I would just say 2/3 of us are on a podcast about Wikipedia. Federico, you were not on that podcast. I think Mike and
I have a deeper imagination than you both.
That's true.
Teachipedia.
Someone in the chat room is suggesting that to really keep up with how long turtle marriages stay together, that you have to have a multi-generation family do it. So I will find some turtles and I will go to my children and say, son, keep an eye on these turtles. And if they are still married when you are dying, your son has to carry on the torch.
How would you qualify a successable marriage between two turtles?
They're happy with each other. They enjoy each other's company. Maybe they have kids. Maybe they don't. So, some people do different things. Maybe they have some property somewhere. It's just about enjoying life on the beach and in the sea. We are really off topic here. So, episode 150, it will start like every other episode, and that is with, can you guess? Can you guess what's first?
Sponsor break?
Yeah, is there some, do we thank everyone? Like what is it?
No, we don't.
Oh, no, wait, it's a teachy tip, right?
We tell people where to find the show notes.
Yeah. Where do you find the show notes, Federico?
Well, you can open an internet navigator and go to basically you need to use your fingers to press the buttons on the computer.
Is this teletext?
It's kind of like teletext, but you don't have a remote. You have like a rectangular puzzle with letters on them, and basically you press them up and down, and you have to write in the computer screen. You will see the text relay.fm. And then you do a slash, which is kind of like a line that is drunk because it's kind of oblique, like it's not. And you do that, and then you do connected, which is the name of this program, and another line with the problem, and 150, and that's how you find the documentation for this week's episode.
I would like to welcome all of our new listeners to the show.
They're all gone now. I'll have to say, just in the spirit of transparency, and the two of you already know this, but Federico making fun of the slash, it felt like it was aimed at me a little bit. I feel like that line today, just sort of slowly meandering off center, maybe falling over later. I learned, children, if you wake up tired, like really out of it, and you're looking for cold medication, make sure you don't take the PM at 7 o'clock in the morning, or by the time it's 9:15 and you're on a podcast, things get a little weird. So at some point, if I just start talking about AppleScript, just hang up on me.
Yep,
which I think
no
is
problem.
probably the common rule anyways.
Yeah, this is the agreement that me and Federico made a long time ago. Oh, we're having Skype trouble today. Bye, Stephen.
Oh, no. Bye. All right, follow up. The first two are about me, which is awkward. So, Mike, do you want to take the first two?
Whilst we were in San Jose together, Stephen put on a talk as part of AltConf, and he was talking about the realities of indie life. I recommend people go and watch this. They've got a video now. This is why we're talking about this. It was a very entertaining speech talk. Stephen is a very good public speaker.
Oh, come on.
Which, no, you are. I said it to you at the time. And in a way that I not necessarily find surprising, but it does always surprise me just how good Stephen is at public speaking. So I recommend that you go and watch this because it's very entertaining. And in a way that, just because we do this for a living, weirdly, podcasting doesn't translate to public speaking. Sorry to say, Federico, in case you were hoping to just fly by your engagements this year. They are not transferable skills. It is like an extra thing that you need to be able to do. And Stephen's very good at that, so you should go and watch his talk. Also, as well, he says lots of nice things about me in it, so that's worth looking at. And if you haven't got enough Stephen in your life, he went and did this thing for a reason I'm not completely sure.
Have you ever met me?
Well, yeah, okay. Because I know Stephen, I know why he did this. It worked with our designer at Relay FM, Mr. Frank Towers, to recreate in a lot of instances the wallpapers from old versions of OS X into 5K resolution. Now, I was already using and have been using the Tiger wallpaper because Frank put that together on Twitter a couple of weeks ago, which I assume, what inspired you to ask him to work with you to do the rest of them. And now they're all there in 5K, and I have Leopard on my other iPad. So it's funny to see Tiger on one iPad, Leopard on another. But you can go and download them all.
Yeah, they're fun. Yeah, every one, Lion and before, we had to make bigger. But Mountain Lion forward, they were available in 5K.
Is that the official term, the design term, make bigger? Is that what you do in Photoshop?
Yeah, it's a workflow. Basically, you open Photoshop and you tell Siri to ask Alexa to improve things, and it just happens. It's complicated. I don't want to blow your mind, but no, Frank did it. It's awesome. These have showed up everywhere on the internet, which is not what I expected, but it's a lot of fun. So
yeah, because you do these weird niche things, right? Like the things that the people that go to your website will appreciate, but then every now and then, funnily enough, more people will appreciate it, and this is one of them. And it is a weird one that this is one that catches on, but I get it because they are really beautiful, and they're not possible to get anymore. And if you have any kind of nostalgia, which you probably do for macOS or OS X, one of these is going to jump out at you. Hence why I'm now rocking them on basically all of my devices. I'm going to download one to put on my iMac right now as well. Because I have there is just a nostalgia to them all. And the two of you, mostly Frank, did a really great job. I'm not assuming that you opened Photoshop for this one.
I did not. I just hosted them. It is fun to set them as iOS wallpaper. So like dozens and dozens of people are sending me screenshots, which is awesome. It's fun to see how people use their devices. And it's especially with iOS 11 with the dock, it's kind of fun to see like an old OS X wallpaper on an iOS device. I'm using the Leopard one on my MacBook Pro, which I don't use every day. And the first couple times I opened it, I was like, whoa, what year is it? 2007 in here. But anyway, so they're there. You can go check them out along with everybody else on the internet. Last week we spoke about the Echo Show, and I mentioned in an aside that during the boot sequence it has a little Intel Inside logo, which caught me by surprise in this world of ARM processors. Matt pointed us to an iFixit article where they take the thing apart, and they list it as a 1.92 gigahertz Intel Atom processor. So the Atom line may seem familiar to you. It probably should. That's what a lot of netbooks used back in the day. It's a very low power processor. Very often these days it can be cool without a fan. And there's a 1.92 gig little Intel chipset in there doing Echo Show things. I should also say, you guys spoke about the Echo Show on Upgrade this week, and Jason wrote something on 6 Colors last week. I totally agree with his assessment that it's like putting a billboard in your kitchen, I think is how he phrased it, which is a great turn of phrase. It is very much like that. He is willing to put up with it to see how it evolves. I was not. That's where we kind of diverge. But I think we agree on a lot of the problems in the early days of the Echo Show. And it seems like already Amazon has made some tweaks to make it less annoying, and I think that they will continue to do so. So if you're still interested in the Echo Show, we still have more questions about it. Jason goes much deeper in detail than I did on the show in that blog post. So we'll have a link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, Jason really, I think, just fundamentally like the device more than you do, right? And
Yes.
I think that's perfectly fine, right? Like we all have our personal tastes, and it's just not a device for you. So that colors all of your opinions about it, right? And it's going to be working similarly for him. Like his initial opinion is stronger than yours. He likes it more, but that means that everything else that he's going to say is of a lens which is different to yours.
Sure, that's the beauty of reviewing products. We don't all have to agree. So, before we get into sort of the meat of the follow-up, I put this link in here this morning. I don't remember if we talked about this on the show. We were going to at some point and we didn't. But I know we've gotten a couple emails about it from listeners about especially the first gen Apple Watch, the charging like glass on the back. I don't know what you would call that, like the surface on the back with the heart rate sensors. Sometimes those just come off, and there's adhesive in there that holds it together. And it seems like Apple is putting together a official repair program for this. So what we have heard from listeners and people on Twitter is that if this happens, the pictures in the show notes, you ought to look at them even if you don't own an Apple Watch. It's kind of crazy to see the back of this thing just fall out. That if you have this problem, Genius Bars have been replacing the watches, at least for most people, sort of just on the spot. But it seems like Apple is making this more of an official program now, which is good. That they will cover this repair for 3 years from the date of purchase, which is what Apple does if there's some sort of manufacturing defect. And it seems like that's what it is. Not every watch is doing this. If you have a first generation Apple Watch, you don't have to wouldn't live in fear that this happens. But if it does, it seems like Apple's going to take care of you. So that popped up this morning and thought it was worth a mention.
Yeah, I mean, there is a Series 1 Apple Watch in use in our home every single day. No problems like this, like nothing even nearly happening. So, of course, it could happen, but it doesn't mean that it will happen. It's like any of these things, right? Like that might have been made somewhere, and the adhesive that they were using over that 2-week span wasn't as strong, like whatever. Or like dependent on the type of person you are, the amount of working out that you do, it might loosen it, right? Like stuff like that, I guess.
There's no telling. So I think it's definitely like a limited problem. Like I think we would hear about it much more if every single first gen Apple Watch was just falling apart. It seems to be just a small batch.
All right, we're not done with follow-up yet, but looking at how much we have left, I think it might be time to take a break. Today's show is brought to you by Squarespace. Use the offer code WORLD at checkout, and you'll get 10% off your first purchase. Make your next move with Squarespace. They let you easily create the website for your next idea. They give you the ability to grab a unique domain name to give your site the brand and name and story and identity you want to give it, as well as taking advantage of beautiful award-winning templates that feature drag-and-drop designs so you can make things look exactly how you want. Squarespace have a 24/7 customer support team if you need any help. It's an all-in-one platform that will let you build whatever type of website you want. There's nothing to install, no upgrades needed for your Squarespace site. There are no patches that you have to worry about either. They take care of all of this. They're solid. They have rock-solid hosting. They've got everything covered. Squarespace sites, they stay up because Squarespace takes care of it. You don't have to worry about anything. They've got you. Maybe you want to create an online store. They have functionality to do that. If you want to create a blog, it's easy to do. Maybe you want to create a portfolio or a website for your band, a website for an upcoming event, maybe a wedding. I'm thinking about that. Maybe you want to create a website for a local community group. No matter what it is, Squarespace have all of the tools to help you create it. Maybe you're going to help make a site for somebody else. Squarespace's support team can then take over the support once you've helped them set it up if you want to. Squarespace plans start at just $12 a month. You can sign up for a free trial today with no credit card required. Just go to squarespace.com. That's SQUARESPACE.com. But come on, who doesn't know how to sell Squarespace by now? When you decide to sign up, use the offer code WORLD at checkout. You'll get 10% of your first purchase and show your support for this show. We thank Squarespace for their support of Connected over its entire history and the prompt before. We really do appreciate their support. Squarespace, make your next move, make your next website.
So the next section to follow up, I've named Touch ID versus Face ID versus connected. So this topic we spoke about last week generated more follow-up than anything we've done in a while. And I've kind of picked through it and chosen some themes. A lot of people wrote very similar things, and so I'm sorry if you don't get credit, but we did read everything. First, a lot of people were asking about or talking about the idea of this is more than just like taking a picture of your face, and people thought that maybe Face ID, which is still funny to say, like, is that some combination of Core ML and ARKit? Like, could these new frameworks do something clever together? And Federico, since you are the teacher, I was curious if this rings true to you, or do you what do you think?
Well, the entire face recognition engine would be based heavily on Core ML for sure. So that's a given. Like the way that the system would learn to recognize faces. I mean, it already does in the API. So we can only assume that Apple itself, for their own features, they're already using this quite heavily. So that's for sure. ARKit, I'm not sure about, because it's primarily meant to interact with the environment. So basically pointing the camera at stuff rather than people. But you can combine the two, maybe, face recognition and maybe ARKit to sort of do detection of surfaces. So in the API, right now, developers cannot use ARKit to detect vertical panes or vertical surfaces. You cannot recognize walls, basically. But it appears that the feature is available for Apple as a private API. In the the system can actually recognize a vertical surface. So in theory, it could be combined, I guess, to sort of using Core ML, using ARKit, and maybe using the depth information of a dual facing front camera. You can maybe use that to isolate your face against some kind of background. But I think in general, I don't see ARKit becoming a fundamental piece of face recognition, because it's primarily based on, that kind of demo that Apple did, basically understanding the environment and doing stuff with the environment, but not necessarily for face recognition, because those are separate APIs. But Core ML and vision and depth information, if the iPhone 8 or the iPhone Pro gets a dual-facing front camera, those for sure are going to be used for this system.
I think that makes sense. I think the waters are muddied a little bit by the scanning in the Notes app. You can take a picture of a document, you don't have to be squared up with it, and it can straighten it out. And people, I think even Apple said that's using ARKit, and so maybe there was some confusion there.
It's kind of using ARKit, like in the sense of it's recognizing when the document is sitting on a surface, and then like it can use another API to like the rectangular detection and that type of stuff. That's what it can do. It's not really ARKit in the sense of, the same demo that Apple showed at WWDC, and Notes is using the same engine. It's like part of the same API is shared in the document scanner, but it's not all of it.
Okay.
It's very confusing, and it's one of the things that I would like Apple to clarify going forward, because I need to know from my review. So yeah. I will keep you posted about that.
Okay. George wrote in, I kind of disagree with Federico's assumption that the authentication has to be like a selfie. So we talked about, hey, you got to hold the camera up to your face so it can see you. And he says that assumption is made based on the angle view of the FaceTime camera of the phone. And I think we were clear in that we see this being camera plus IR sensor and something else, but the camera still has to see you. Like you may not have to raise it all the way up to be a selfie, but I do think there has to be some line of sight, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, I struggle to imagine how you wouldn't point the phone at your face to authenticate properly with the degree of security that Apple imagines. And I mean, sure, it's fun to imagine this kind of super wide lens, camera that even if you're holding the phone at waist level, it can somehow recognize your face by looking at your chin from below, but that's unrealistic at best. So you're gonna have to at least make an attempt at taking a selfie, even if it's not like I'm not saying that you should be should be striking a pose to authenticate with your face. But, there has to be some kind of, let me grab my phone and let me look at my face to authenticate, even if it takes a second. That's the entire point. Otherwise, let's call it chin authentication or neck authentication. If you're supposed to be looking at your face, not, a very tiny portion of it from a very weird angle. So I struggle to see that.
Yeah, I think we maybe just weren't quite clear enough. But I think you're right. There's definitely limitations here, and that's definitely one of them. Jason asks, and it was a serious question, and we did not think of it, but it is interesting to think about. In the case of identical twins, their fingerprints are still different, but I could go unlock my brother's phone, I guess. So identical twins, good luck with Face ID, I guess.
So here's my question about identical twins.
Yes.
How identical are two people?
They can be identical.
No, I mean, we may see them that way, right? But
you see, the computer may see the differences.
That's what I'm wondering. How identical can two people be, actually?
That's the question, right? How accurate can this system be? Sub-millimeter differences. Can it detect those?
Because, the identical twin question, I think, is the same as the 3D model question. What is it? What are these things actually looking for? What does it map? Is the distance between the eyes exactly the same? Right? Is the curvature of the mouth exactly the same? Right? How do these things change, and what are these cameras looking for? I think that is and honestly, I look forward to when BuzzFeed does a thing putting the two identical, because it will be BuzzFeed, putting identical twins in a room and seeing if they can unlock each other's phones. Right? Genuinely, I look forward to seeing the results of a fun test like that on YouTube.
There's two things that I forgot to bring up last time. The first one is, how do you say no to face authentication?
You just say no. It sees your face. You just go no,
you just shake your head and say no.
Yeah.
So that's my first question. The other one is, how does it relate to expressions? With Touch ID, my fingerprint doesn't change, even if I move my finger, if I'm happy, if I'm sad, if I'm in a hurry, or if I have time. It doesn't matter. The fingerprint mostly doesn't change. But if I'm using face recognition, and now all these mathematical calculations, like the curvature of my eyebrows and the distance between my eyes, all those data points, they change because my face moves and because I have expressions. And so I'm wondering, how much can the algorithm be thrown off while still authenticating you?
Well, my thought on that would be, yes, your fingerprint is a static thing, but the part of your finger that touches the sensor is not. So, it can and does detect different variations of your finger, right? Different movements, different orientations. And my hope would be that it's a similar kind of ideal, right? It will scan your face, you'll scan your face making different faces, and over time it learns and adapts, right? Your face is, in a similar way to your fingerprint, it is the one thing that it is, but what this phone sees can be different every single time. And I would hope that the data is mapped in and then is adapted as time continues.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's interesting, though. It's interesting to think the changes that could become with it and all the ramifications.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this, honestly. I think that this is a really interesting thing to think about, and it could and would be a potentially really, really big change, and that is intriguing to me.
There's a report out today saying it's such a big change that the new iPhone may launch without Apple Pay, which is just come on. There's no way.
I don't believe
it for 1 second.
No. I can't see that. That's iOS 11 literally has new features based around Apple Pay. A headlining feature for the iPhone will be this peer-to-peer Apple Pay stuff. That's one of the big things that they're talking about. Apple Pay will be I would put money on it. I will put Apple Pay money on it, right? Yeah. They are not launching this phone without Apple Pay. Apple Pay is one of the most important things for the company right now, right? It's one of the services revenue streams. It is hugely important to them. This whole, Apple, I think people are underestimating the fact that Apple are creating a bank now, right? Like that is what they are doing with this virtual touch Apple Pay stuff. That is going to be in their flagship phone. Like, there's no way.
Yeah. These analysts that issue these research notes or whatever, these reports, it feels like sometimes they live in a bubble and they don't pay any minimal attention to whatever Apple is doing in software.
Well, it's stuff that's real easy to say when you want to make some money.
Apple has placed X orders with the supply chain, but have you looked at what they are actually doing with iOS software? How can you say that Apple Pay is not going to be part of the iPhone? Have you ever looked at iOS in the past 2 years? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Agreed. I think I just wanted to bring it up to make fun of it. So
yeah, good job.
Federico, you drive a Cadillac now.
Yes, I do. In fact, I'm recording from my Cadillac today because it also has a podcast room inside.
Podcasters in cars recording podcasts?
Podcasters in Cadillacs getting coffee. Yeah, that's what I do. No, basically what happened is I got an email from a reader, and he attached 2 screenshots, and he was like, I saw this on the Cadillac website, and I'm not sure you're aware of this. And basically what they're doing is they have a section on the Cadillac website where they're talking about the software features of the modern Cadillac cars. And there's a section on this page about CarPlay. And in the CarPlay graphics, there's an animated GIF, and they want to show off like the CarPlay home screen with the notification coming in from iMessage, and the name of the person that they're using for iMessage is my name. So you're on the Cadillac website, you're scrolling, it's all in English, of course. Then you reach the CarPlay section, and you see this notification coming in from Federico Vitici on the Cadillac website.
It's so weird. It's so weird.
Like, you could have used any other like default like placeholder American name, like Johnny Appleseed,
right? Like that's
stuff like that. And as it turned out, I think there's someone on the web development team for Cadillac that is a fan of Mac Stories, and I'm pretty sure that this person reached out on Twitter as well after I shared the screenshot. So it's a funny little Easter egg. I thought it was really cool. Also kind of weird, but cool. Mostly. Just
if you can get them in touch for sponsorship, I really appreciate that. It's a lifelong dream of mine to have a car sponsor. I have absolutely no idea why, but
what would you say on the show about Cadillac?
You know what I would say? I would say that every Cadillac is dedicated to innovation, performance, and craftsmanship for a better driving experience.
You're so good at this. You should sell advertisements for a living.
I'm working on it.
Oh boy. Federico, you also, in addition to driving a Cadillac, you have rewritten cover sheet by hand in beta 3.
Yes.
Have I said that I don't like this name yet? Have I said this yet?
Yes, I agree with you. Okay. It's a weird name.
I don't feel like you have. Tell us more about it.
I have very particular thoughts on names of lots of things. Cover sheet is one of them. I just don't. I know, I get it. I get the name, but it doesn't sound anything at all like what it is. Like, it doesn't sound like that. Cover sheet does not sound... Like, if you say, oh, go to the cover sheet, I wouldn't think, oh, that's the amalgamation of notification center on the lock screen. 100% I get that. No, it doesn't...
It's for an OS that is surprisingly descriptive in terms of the names of the features and the apps. Cover sheet is so nondescript, like it doesn't describe anything.
Nope.
Like what is a cover sheet? It's like, am I lying in bed and am I cold?
All of the things the cover sheet contains are not at all represented by the name.
No.
It's not a sheet.
Covers and it's not sheets.
It's not covering anything.
Anyway, to your question, Stephen. I went in to Cupertino with my scalpel. And I redid the cover sheet. Basically, in beta 3, Apple got rid of the weird seesaw kind of gesture that I complained about for the past 2 weeks. Now, when you swipe down, it's just one single list of notifications, which is better because you don't have to swipe down, then swipe up and hold to release to load the past notifications. Now you swipe down and it's like before. It's a whole list of unseen and previous notifications. Grouped by day. I'm sorry, Mike, but grouped by app is never coming back.
Yeah, I don't even I don't even get upset about this anymore because it's fine. It's like, this is my thing. It's not everyone's thing, and it's never going to happen again. So whatever.
So this is better. At least you don't have to do the hold to release gesture anymore. I still think it's, aside from the fact that swiping down to view a fake lock screen that is not locked, it's still weird to at least to my personal taste.
Yeah.
But it's still, I still think it's still kind of slow to process and triage individual notifications. Yes, you can press on them either with a long press or 3D touch, and then either tap on a little X button or swipe down while holding with 3D touch to remove it. But it feels so slow for a couple of reasons. First, I think there's just a psychological element of it feels faster to swipe and tap. We've been conditioned to do that everywhere on iOS, to delete messages, to delete emails, to delete anything. And we have developed, I think, seriously, as a human race, we have developed a very good skill set at swiping and tapping.
It is akin to pull to refresh at this point.
Yeah. And there's also the problem that the gesture itself to 3D touch and then swipe down has some odd timing right now that sometimes fails. Like you swipe down and it doesn't highlight the dismiss text, like it doesn't trigger that. And so especially on the iPad, I'm swiping down and it doesn't do anything.
It's so bad on the iPad because it is a fixed animation. And you feel that. Where on the iPhone, it doesn't feel that way because it feels like there's more direct manipulation by you pushing into the screen. But on the iPad, that's not the case. So you're just waiting. And it really frustrates me. Have you tried pulling down on the lock screen? Have you seen what happens when you do that?
You pull down on the lock screen?
If you're on the lock screen and you pull down as if you were going to pull down the notification center, it kind of fades your notifications in, but doesn't let you do it because it's trying to show you, no, they're down there. That tells you everything you need to know about how bad this design is because they know that people are going to do that. So they fade them in, but no, it's not there. Yeah, that out of everything, that shows me the internal fighting that I reckon is going on over this feature right now.
Surprisingly, a lot of people seem to be convinced that this is a great idea. So
either we're all stupid, they're the people that you're talking to,
and I guess. And I just don't see it. I continue to not see the this greater good of switching from a notification center that does what the name implies to, here's your lock screen because you're used to it and we want to basically babysit you because, you pick up the phone and it's on the lock screen and you view notifications, so you're not able to process two distinct locations at once. You want to have all your notifications in one place. This is the same argument. I really don't.
Yeah, I honestly, at this point, I am past the point of believing that Apple is in a position to deal with notifications properly. Time and time again, they have done a bad job of it. So I'm just happy that they make the Apple Watch, which is a device that can give me notifications in a manner that I like.
Yeah, and even in that case, it doesn't have all the settings that we would like to have.
But I get the most important stuff notified to me in a way that makes sense and I can triage nicely. Because on the big iOS devices, at this point, whether it is a desire to not do it or a desire to try and make a mass market version of whatever they think the notification should be, they just can't do it right. It's just not working. So I've accepted this and moved on personally.
Yeah. So the only part of the review that I've skipped so far, along with the stuff that doesn't work, like sharing iCloud storage, the only section of a feature that I could write about because it's done, it's there, but I don't want to do, it's cover sheet and notifications because I cannot do it right now. I'm struggling to process that. I still don't understand. And I'm hoping that someday I will wake up and be like, yes, I totally get it now. So I'm waiting, but I don't know if it'll ever happen.
We're at beta 3.
Mm-hmm.
It's not impossible, but it's becoming less and less likely.
Yeah, that's an interesting comment, Mike, because things do change in later betas, but each one that we get where the feature is the same, it is more and more likely that the feature is going to stay that way. Like very rarely does something major change in a late beta.
Especially when they're making refinements to the situation.
Like if they're polishing something you don't like, you should get used to that thing.
Yeah. Right. Like they are not changing this system. They are making changes to the system that currently is, but it's actually making it still, I think, less like the old one. Right. Yeah. But it's not good. But Federico, there has been a new addition to your household.
Yeah, we finally bought a new MacBook Pro. So
surprise, Teachy's switching back. You wore him down, you ground him down, and he's going back to the Mac.
That is not accurate. It's not what is happening, Mike, at all. Basically, what I did was I bought a 2017, so the latest generation MacBook Pro with the Touch Bar, 13-inch, top of the line specs, as a birthday gift for Sylvia. And now that she has a new MacBook Pro, I can use her old 2015 MacBook Pro. So my old Air is finally retiring in a farm up north of Rome, which is actually my closet. And now I'm recording and will be recording from now on from this more recent MacBook Pro that doesn't have a keyboard that is giant and that actually works and that can open 2 apps at once. You know, all the features that you would expect from a modern computer. This 2015 MacBook Pro can do. It feels nice, but what I want to talk about briefly is my very brief experience with the 2017 MacBook Pro. So it's the first time that we owned a computer with a touch bar or with this space gray design. Mm-hmm. It looks fantastic, and what I immediately loved was the touch bar. Like, it clicked right away, and the way that it kind of puts shortcuts for stuff that you can do with the keyboard or you can do with the mouse, but it's right there. I find that very convenient, and Sylvia agrees with me. And it could be that I'm not a huge user of keyboard shortcuts, at least not to the extent that most Mac users are. And I never was. So having a visual shortcut right there in the keyboard, it reminds me of the shortcuts bar on iOS, which I also use all the time. You know, the buttons on the sides of the quick type suggestions. I use those all the time. So the touch bar, like, it immediately made sense. And I think it looks great. Touch ID is amazing, of course. Being able to log into a Mac just by placing your fingerprint is what it should be, and also why, you know, I'll be sad if it goes away, but, you know, we'll see if it's a better system. And the keyboard. I love the keyboard. I love the sound that it makes. I love the depth of the keys when you press them. It's fantastic, and I wish my Magic Keyboard was like that, which I realize is an unpopular opinion. I haven't really been paying much attention to what the consensus among Mac users is. I guess most people hate the touch bar and hate the keyboard, and I love both of them, so yay.
Let me ask you a couple of questions about the touch bar, because I felt that way about the touch bar the first time I ever used the touch bar, when I was paying attention to the touch bar. My problem, like, I think that, you know, having the keyboard shortcuts and stuff there is really good. Like, I also think that is a really great thing about it. The thing that I didn't like about it was when I wasn't paying attention to it and was switching from app to app and stuff like that, I personally didn't like the way that it would catch in my peripheral vision. So have you, like, spent time just using the MacBook Pro?
Yeah, I set it up for Sylvia, yeah.
And you didn't find that to be distracting?
No, because the screen is also distracting. Stuff changes on the screen, and the touch bar is another screen. It's like having 2 screens. Only one of them is tiny.
Yeah, I think for me, it was distracting because it was unexpected. So maybe, like, after some time, like, I would get used to it. But it was just like, you know, things were happening in a place that my brain wasn't expecting them to happen, right? Which, you know, I think it's just a thing you'd have to get used to.
Yeah. I think it's because you use a Mac more, and so you're more used to the idea of having a fixed place in that specific point of your field of vision that never changes. Yeah. But as someone who uses the iPad every day, and I grab this new computer and there's something moving down there, like, it doesn't bother me because I'm used to stuff moving on the screen. So it doesn't catch my attention, but I know what you mean, and I think that's why. So that's an interesting difference.
I think you're right about the background, like where you come from when you approach the touch bar definitely influences what you think about it. Like Mac users who have been primarily Mac users for a long time find it distracting, find it to be a bit gimmicky. I think that's where I come down on it after months of using it now. Like it's nice, but it doesn't add that much and it takes away some things. But yeah, I can see though, like from the iPad user perspective, coming to the touch bar, it feels more at home. And in some ways, it brings what's good about iOS and its input to the Mac. I find that difference very interesting because when you were talking about you really like it, both of you really like it, it's like, whoa, like that really doesn't jive with what most people have said. But as I sit through and think about who said those things, the background where you come from, your primary computing platform, obviously is an influence in how you think about it.
Yeah, like it's something that I would want on my keyboard. I know I'd need to get used to it. Like I didn't like when I was using your MacBook in San Jose that like things were happening that I wasn't expecting, right? Like it just kept catching my eye. But I feel like over time I would get used to that. And I would go back to my original feeling, which is that I like the ability to have shortcuts at just, arm's reach. In the way that I set up my Wacom tablet, where it has shortcut buttons and they do things when I'm in Logic, I would like to have access to that sort of stuff on the keyboard. Like, I think that, Federico, I mean, again, if you're not paying too much attention, I think one of the prevailing thing right now about the keyboard is that it has been faulty in a lot of instances for some people, where like keys have been getting physically stuck. I think that has been the problem with the keyboard, right? So if you've been seeing people that are like, the keyboard sucks, less people, I think, at least what I see, Stephen, you can correct me if I'm wrong, are complaining about like the travel. It seems like Apple have made the travel and all that sort of stuff a lot better. But when this product was initially released, there seemed to be some actual problems, like technical problems with the keyboard.
Yeah, the keys are getting stuck. They're having failures with them. I have the 2016 MacBook Pro. It seems to be slightly different on the 17, maybe hopefully better. I haven't had any problems with mine, but again, I don't use that machine daily. But it seems like they're having some problems with it. And they've had problems with the MacBook keyboards as well, which are very similar. In fact, my wife has had one keyboard replacement on her MacBook and is due for a second, which is ridiculous on a machine that's 2 years old. But
yeah,
the whole touch bar debate is sort of muddied by the fact that the keyboard has problems. Some people just don't like the MacBook Pro. They think Apple made the wrong decision surrounding it, and it's all very muddy. But it's just fascinating to hear you guys talk about it with your different backgrounds to me and how you feel about it. And I think, Federico, what you're saying is like what Apple wants people to feel about the touch bar. Like, it brings all this great stuff from iOS to the Mac, and it just seems like some Mac people are hesitant about that.
Yeah. So are the complaints of faulty keyboards about this year's model as well, or last year's?
They seem to be primarily about the 2016. I think it's too early to say if the 2017s have the same problem.
Yeah, I've seen people sharing pictures online of like keys that have been ripped out, and it shows that there is a difference, like that there is this new little piece of rubber or something in the key, which is apparently making it better. Right? Like I've seen stuff like that, but I haven't seen anything concrete.
Yeah. But Federico, so you went from a MacBook Air, 2/3 of a MacBook Air, to a 2015 MacBook Pro. Is that a 13 or a 15-inch?
13.
Okay, so the size difference isn't huge. How do you find the Pro so far? I don't know you had experience with it already, but
yeah, it's fine. It's faster. It's the same Mac, but it's got a Retina display, which is nice. But I'm used to it.
Yeah. Because I was thinking, like, what differences are you even going to see, right? It's like, you're not doing anything on it that you would feel the power, but the Retina display would make a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's got a Retina display. I don't know. The keyboard is newer. It's not broken.
Has all the keys. It's good news.
It has all the keys. Doesn't have the Touch Bar and Touch ID, which I really want now that I've seen them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't even listen to music on it. I have no idea. All I do is Skype and Google Docs and Slack. So it's fine.
Oh man.
It's just a dumb terminal for me. Like
later this year, I'm going to be in the US for like a whole month, like 4 or 5 weeks. I'm starting to get nervous about my MacBook.
Mm-hmm. You should be,
because that's the computer that needs to produce everything for a month. Starting to get a little bit nervous about it. I'm just gonna say. I don't know. Like it's really been fine in a pinch for everything I've needed it to do.
I mean, I just remember at WWDC you were doing something on it and were bemoaning its speed, and then we ended up using my MacBook Pro. So
yeah, because it is super slow. It is very slow.
Yeah,
but it works when it's in a pinch. But I'm worrying about like what a month's worth.
I gotta say, man, the 13-inch Pro weighs what the 13-inch Air did. Like, it's still pretty small and light.
This week's episode is also brought to you by Pingdom. You can start monitoring your websites and servers today by going to pingdom.com/relayfm. You can sign up for a 14-day free trial there. And if you enter the offer code CONNECTED, you'll get 30% off your first invoice. That is a huge saving. Pingdom is focused on making the web faster and more reliable for everybody who has a website. They do this by offering powerful and easy-to-use tools and services. If you're a Pingdom user, you can monitor the availability and performance of a server, database, website, so much more. It's all a breeze. Pingdom have more than 70 global test servers that emulate visits to your site, checking its availability as often as every minute. If Pingdom detects any type of outage, they will let you know, and they can let you know in a multitude of different ways. You can set up a bunch of different types of notifications with them, so Pingdom can let you know that there's an issue as soon as possible. These days, websites are so sophisticated, they include several dependencies as well. Contact forms, e-commerce checkouts, logins, search functions. Pingdom can monitor the availability of all of these interactions independently. It's not just about whether your site is up or down anymore. All you need to do is give Pingdom the URL you wish to monitor, and they take care of the rest. Check it out today, and you'll be the first to know when your site is down. Go to pingdom.com/relayfm for a 14-day free trial and use the code CONNECTED at checkout to get a massive 30% off your first invoice. And thanks to Pingdom for their support of this show and Relay FM.
So this week in Teachy Teaches, we're going to talk about iOS 11 location and privacy changes. So Federico, what is Apple doing here? What does it mean?
So there's a few interesting changes here. And the bigger ones are about location and the way that location tracking is represented on iOS. So some context. There's two primary types of location authorization that you can grant to third-party apps on iOS. The when in use location tracking. So while you're using the app can ask for location services. Or the always authorization, which means even in the background. So if an app is not in the foreground, it can ask for location services, and in some cases get launched in the background to perform some location-based features. According to Apple, at a session at WWDC, 21% of apps that use 21% of third-party apps on iOS use the always type of authorization. And Apple thinks maybe they have the data about this, or I assume they're checking the APIs that developers actually use, that most of these apps, they don't actually need the always authorization. So maybe they're asking for that type of access out of laziness because it's easier, or because they want to be clever about it, because they think, well, maybe, just ask for always because we always want to track users. Then maybe in the future we'll figure out why we want to track them and to use that data. There have been some high-profile cases of apps that were using the always authorization that couldn't work unless you granted that type of location access, such as Uber, for example. They were doing some shady things with location. So Apple basically wants to make sure that whenever possible, developers use the when in use location authorization in their apps. And they're gonna do this they're gonna tackle this problem in a bunch of ways. The first one is they're reworking entirely the way that these permissions are granted. So, the alert that comes up when when an app asks for location access, in iOS 10, the app can bring up an alert that says, I want to ask for location while in use, or if the app says, no, I don't want to have the when in use authorization, I always want to track location all the time. And so in iOS 10, an app can display an alert that says, this app wants to always access your location. And you can say continue or deny the authorization. That's going to change. So by default, the option that says while using the app is always gonna be in there. And this change is being retroactively applied to iOS 10 apps running on iOS 11. So an iOS 10 app that uses the always type of authorization only. So if the developer has hard-coded the always option into their app, the alert will automatically change in iOS 11 and include the when in use option. And for iOS 11 apps, Apple is recommending a new type of authorization flow. So they're suggesting that developers do this. You start off during the onboarding process for your app. You start off by asking for when in use. So, the app wants to use your location for X and Y reasons. They're telling developers, go with the when in use authorization first, because it scares off fewer people. It's more, it can help you earn your users' trust, and it doesn't consume extra power. It doesn't ask for background privileges. It's the right option to use when it's a new app and you want to understand the app. Later, there's a new API in iOS 11 that allows you to ask for an upgrade. So if you're an app that uses a location, at some point, whether it's after X number of days or after a user has completed a specific feature. So once a user trusts your app, you can go with the upgrade prompt, and you can say the 123 location app also wants to track your location always because it can perform this and that features. And here's where it gets interesting. If you don't start with the when in use option, if you go with I just don't care, I wanna ask for always access, you're never gonna, and if the user deny, you're never gonna be able to ask for that upgrade prompt. So Apple has sort of indicated an optimal path for asking for location services, which is make sure that you support both always and when in use. When in use is the default option. It's the first one in the menu. It's the one we recommend. And if you use that type of location authorization, later you're going to be able to ask for a prompt that, this sort of upgrade can be performed in-app. You don't have to go, tell users, go into settings and make sure that you switch from while using to always. You can let this alert ask users to press a button and do the upgrade. And there's also going to be the redesigned alert that explains, Apple calls them the purpose strings. It's 2 textual comments that explains what an app what apps can do with different types of location access. And this is in terms of what is changing in the API for authorization. So once again, when in use and always, Apple prefers that you start off with when in use, and later you ask users to upgrade to a higher level of location access with background privileges because they think it's the right thing to do.
So let me just go over some of this again so I can make sure I'm fully understanding this. So if an application wants to track me at all times, right? Like that is all that they want. The point of the application is they need to always know where I am. The first time I open it, what will they show me? What can I see? Like, what is the alert? Do they just say, like, we always want to track you?
So with iOS 11, with the new system, the alert looks like you have 3 options: when in use, always, and never. When in use is the first option in this list, and you have this explanation at the top that says, with when in use, you will be able to access these features. And if you choose always, you're gonna be able to use these features. It's like there's a whole explanation in the alert, and you have 3 options. And while using the app is the first one.
Okay, so you get to then make the decision, right? And so you can say, someone can say like always, right? So that's how they would see it. But there is also this secondary one where they don't present always as an option?
Yes.
And if you do that, which is recommended, later on, you can throw up another prompt
Yes.
which says, oh, hey, this has been fine so far. Are you okay with us looking at this all the time? That kind of thing.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
So what happens if somebody, like, so there's the blue bar thing. What's the blue bar thing all about?
Okay. So before we get to talk about the blue bar, quick mention. There's also the icons, the location icons, like the arrows. What the arrows mean is changing also. So in iOS 10, you had like a solid arrow for most of the location services in the status bar, and region monitoring, which is one of the location services, had a hollow arrow, and the continuous monitoring, so like turn by turn directions, had the blue status bar. With iOS 11, the blue status bar we're gonna talk about separately, but the location, the arrow icons, it's empty, so it's a hollow icon when a location is being requested by an app. It's a solid arrow for a few seconds, when an app is actively receiving your location. So request, empty arrow, solid arrow, it's actually reading and receiving your location. But the most important part is the blue status bar. So when an app is using the always type of access in the background, and it's monitoring, like it's kicking off to ask for a location service in the background, you will get the double height status bar that says something like Google Maps is actively using your location. And Apple is doing this. Their argument, which I find very amusing, their argument is that they're actually making developers a favor, because this bar, and I'm quoting, matches user expectations, and developers were missing out on a feature by not having the blue bar
of course
appear on iOS. So Apple's public argument is, look, you should be happy that we're doing this, because your app was using location in the background, but users didn't know about them. So now they have a way that they can see that your app is using their location always in the background, and they can tap on it to launch your app. But in practice, it's really a shame bar, and they're actually location shaming apps that ask for location access, because the bar is super distracting. It gets in the way. It squeezes your content underneath. And yeah, sure, I'm happy as a developer that people are aware of my features, but do we really want to talk about this in the way that Apple it's selling this idea to sessions? Like, we all know that some developers, some companies were using the always authorization to do some shady things in the background, whether it's tracking you for, to sort of build a profile of your habits, or to sell you against advertisements of some kind. And to have an easier way to say, hey, why is Uber launching in the background and using my location? Now I'm not using Uber. I'm not requesting Uber. What's it doing? It's a way to tell people, and especially people who are going to update in September, not people like us who put the betas now on our devices or who do fresh installs, of the iOS 11 beta. But people like my mom or my girlfriend, they update to iOS 11 in September. And suddenly, all of these location apps that are using the always type of authorization in the background, in iOS 10, they have an arrow in the status bar. Most people don't notice the arrow. Now they're going to see the blue status bar. They're going to be like, what is going on here? Let me check on this app. Let me go into my privacy settings, because I don't like this. Why is he using my location in the background? So yeah, it's a blue shame bar, and I totally get it. Like, I totally understand why Apple wants to do it. I know that there's some companies, and high-profile companies also, using this technique to, these companies, anything they're gonna be able to do to build out a profile of their users, or to intrude your privacy in some sort of manner, they're gonna do it. I mean, just yesterday we saw that Apple added a new API for Safari View Controller, because some companies have been using the Safari View Controller on iOS 10 to track users for advertisements reasons, and now Apple has sort of built a new API that is more secure and private. Like, these companies are always gonna find all these APIs in iOS to do something that Apple doesn't like. And it makes sense to me that now we have this blue bar that gets in the you really cannot miss it. It gets in the way. It's there.
I want to clarify on the blue bar because I need to understand it. If I have said an application is allowed to track me all the time, so am I going to see this blue bar all the time now?
So that's my question. Right now, the only way that I can test this is with an iOS 10 app. Actually, two iOS 10 apps, Moves and Google Maps, that had basically being grandfathered into always location access from the old iOS 10 installation. Now I see the blue bar on iOS 11. Even if back on iOS 10, I manually said, yes, I want you to track me because I want to use your features. I don't know in iOS 11, with an iOS 11 compiled app built for the iOS 11 SDK, if I manually press always. I mean, even in iOS 10, you had to manually press always. It's not like there was some shady way for apps to enable it without your consent. So I assume you're also going to see the blue bar with iOS 11 apps, even if you manually say, yes, I want you to always track me. And that's one of my, let's say, concerns of there are a subset of users, again, people like, Mike and I, we want Google Maps to track us in the background because we want to use the timeline feature. I think it's convenient and I want Google to track me and to build a map of my movements. Some people might find that creepy. I find that useful. Look, it's an open decision. And now I'm going to be basically punished as a user by seeing the blue bar get in the way every few minutes for a decision that I consciously made,
Yeah, I don't want that.
Yeah.
So what I think this will end up doing is I'll just be way, 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 way more picky about the apps that I will let do it, and I'll probably end up turning it off for a bunch of apps if it keeps popping up, right? Like, I feel like and I think this is probably what Apple are looking to do, but I don't know if necessarily introducing frustrations is one of the best things to do for your users. Like, I get why they're doing it, but like people are going to find it frustrating. And I mean, I don't know who people blame in that scenario. Like, do they blame iOS or do they blame the app? I don't know. But yeah, that does feel like something that will be frustrating. But what it will result in, at least for me, is rethinking the applications that I allow to have my location data.
Yeah. To be fair, in my usage so far, this shame bar also exposed, how developers actually use location in the background. So Google Maps seems to be extremely judicious about accessing location. Like, it pings my location services every few minutes, and it only lasts like a couple of seconds because it checks on your location and it says, okay, if this ping goes on your timeline, or nope, you're still in the same place. I don't need to monitor you anymore for the next few minutes. So Google Maps is okay because I only see it for like 2 seconds. Moves, which is owned by Facebook now, I had to uninstall because they were so bad that like the blue bar was almost stuck. Like for several minutes, Moves was pinging my location in the background. And I think it's because Moves is a very old app built for old APIs for location services. I'm pretty sure they don't even use the old, like the new significant location change API. They basically, whenever they see like a GPS change, they're like, well, let's just stay in the background now and see whatever happens. And then we use the Facebook database of points of interest to determine what this is. So I think, you're going to see the apps that actually make good use of the location services APIs in the background and the bad players. And I think, like you said, we will end up uninstalling some of these apps. Yeah. For now, I'm keeping Google Maps installed because it's not too bad. But, when the blue bar appears, I kind of wish there was a setting for me to say, I know, and it's okay. Don't show me the blue bar. Or, I don't know, some kind of threshold to be met. Like, after 2 weeks or after 100 appearances of the blue bar, stop showing the blue bar because I'm aware of this. But right now, it's a all or nothing type of setting.
Yeah, I think that's going to frustrate me. Like, I feel like I'm going to have nanny iOS, right? Like, looking after me. Like, if I tell an application under this new system, like, we're good, I don't want to keep seeing that blue bar. That would annoy me.
Yeah, it feels heavy-handed. It feels like they could do some more to explain to users what's going on, but not do it in a way that's going to annoy them for years on end, right? Like, there's got to be a middle ground here.
Like you said, every few minutes, you feel like you see Google Maps for a few seconds. I do not want to do that, right? Like, if I'm using my iPhone and, like, every couple of minutes, the status bar goes blue and pushes all the content down, that's going to get really annoying real quick.
Yeah, and but you see why Apple is doing this, right? Like from their perspective, they were like, Tim Cook is like, so these Uber folks, they've been doing location in the background. Is that even an API that we have? Because you have to assume that these executives, they don't know the nitty-gritty details of what is a location service API, what does it constitute? And it's like, so these Uber folks, I'm really upset. What can we do? Can we tell people about this background stuff that I don't like? Do we really have to keep the API? And Craig Federico is like, well, actually, Tim, we cannot kill off the location services API because a bunch of apps depend on it. And Tim is like, so can we shame them in some way? Can we tell people, look, this app is using your location in the background? And it's like, I have an idea. Let's just rejigger the double height status bar that we use, in a bunch of places and tell people this app is using your location in the background. And there we go. And that's probably honestly what happened. Like, I see why Apple wants to do it. It's not the most elegant solution, especially for, is there even a thing called location power users? I don't know. But for people like us, it's going to be annoying. And for, honestly, everybody else is going to be, I don't want to say a lifesaver, but a lot of people are going to be thankful that they're going to save battery and they're going to be more, they're going to have the peace of mind that some apps are no more tracking them in the background. So
yeah, I just think if they hate it so much, just stop doing it. Like if you hate that people are doing this tracking so much that you're trying to shame people, then just take the API out. Like I understand what you're saying about like, oh, it would really harm applications, but like the lengths that they're going, that's the next step. So why not just go there? Like if you want to shame applications to the point that every time they're pinging a location server, it's making a physical change on somebody's iPhone, you may as well just remove the ability.
Yeah, but they cannot really remove the ability, right? It's going to be a problem for thousands of apps, and they're going to have to reverse the decision almost immediately. Because so many apps depend on this. Like when there are also like considerable benefits to keeping the always access. Like, I want to know when my Uber is about to arrive, or I want to know when my food ordering app is, about to deliver my meal. Like there are benefits to this. It's just Apple seems to think that the benefits are like you can count them on one hand for a couple of apps, and all these other guys that don't need them. They don't need that type of access. So it's a way of saying, it's okay, we can keep the API, but as a user, you should be extremely careful with what you do with that. And as developers, you should really go with this different flow. Like, they're keeping it, but you can tell if they could remove it, they would. Like, they would just go ahead and rip apart the API.
They're keeping the functionality, but they are hobbling it, right?
Yes.
Like, it's like it's still here, but you really don't want to do this. And that's why I find it just to be like, I see the decision-making process, but it is a strange one, right? Because it's so close to the point of making it unusable, it sounds like.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe, and once again, I haven't tested iOS 11 location-enabled apps. So I'm basing this off of tests with iOS 10 apps, but I'm wondering if maybe a solution would be to show the blue status bar only for some, like a subset of the location services background APIs, or only if it goes on for more than, 5 seconds, like for prolonged use, or for some APIs, like you can not show it for significant location change, but you should show the blue bar for region monitoring. Like the more intensive APIs for longer than X seconds, then show the blue bar. I wonder if that would be an acceptable compromise.
All right, should we take a break?
Yeah.
Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at FreshBooks. If you could reclaim up to 192 hours of your freelance work, of your precious time, every year. Would you do it? Our friends at FreshBooks make cloud accounting software for freelancers that's ridiculously easy to use, and they can help you do just that. By simplifying tasks like invoicing, tracking expenses, and getting paid online, FreshBooks has drastically reduced the time it takes for over 10 million people to deal with their paperwork. FreshBooks automates late payment email reminders so you can spend less time chasing payments and more time working your magic. And with the new projects feature, you can share files and messages with your clients, contractors, and employees super easily. And you can see how quickly things happen when all of your conversations live in just one place, all in FreshBooks. FreshBooks have over 10 million users now, but they've managed to stay a small company, landing them the title of Small Giant on Forbes' lists of best small companies this year. If you're listening to this and not yet using FreshBooks, now is the time to try it out. They are offering an unrestricted 30-day free trial for listeners of this show. No credit card required to sign up. All you have to do is go to freshbooks.com/connected, and please type in connected in the how you heard about us section so they will know that you came to them from this show. Thanks to FreshBooks for their support of this show. Once again, that is freshbooks.com/connected to find out more and sign up for a 30-day free trial. Thanks to FreshBooks for their support. So, Federico, I think people listening to this show, especially over these Teachers segments, will know that right now that you've completed your research and you're diving into writing the iOS 11 review, which is going to become, as I think every year on this show, is going to become something that we keep dipping in and out of as you're going further and further through the process. So I wanted to kind of understand from you at the point that you are right now a little bit about the tools, the apps, and the services that you're using to make this happen. And I've broken this down into kind of what I assume are the three biggest subjects matters here. So research, writing, and editing, because that's kind of where you are in the process right now. And so I'm wondering, I'm assuming the WWDC app is playing a big part of your research. And I wonder kind of how have you been using that? What has that been like? And what apps are you combining it with to complete the research for your iOS 11 review?
So I use the WWDC app primarily in the research and note-taking phase. So if you split up my review writing process in three big stages, there's the note-taking and research, writing, and editing. And the first phase is when I go to WWDC, like physically, my person goes to WWDC and takes notes and talks to people and saves thoughts. And there's the remote WWDC attending, which is when I come back and I start watching the session videos with the WWDC app. What I do is this. I go into the all view of the app, but you can view all the videos. And then I tap on the filter icon and I say, I want to see iOS. I usually exclude developer tools videos because I don't talk about those in my reviews. And then from the grid of videos change. So I go through the grid of every single video and I mark the ones that I think are going to be interesting for my review as favorites. Then I download them and I go back into the filter mode and I say, show me iOS videos that I have downloaded, that I have not watched, and that I've also marked as favorites. So like I have this subset of videos and I start watching them in split view with WWDC on one side and Notes, the Apple Notes app on the other. A difference from last year that I think I mentioned is rather than having an individual note for each video, I clustered more videos together into a single note. So instead of having 5 or 6 videos, 5 or 6 notes for each drag and drop video, I have a single drag and drop note with notes from 6 sessions inside. And that kind of helped me already in the research phase establish an order and a sense of what are the chapters and the sections that I'm gonna use in my review. Also, a note on split view. It's much better if you use an external keyboard when watching video and taking notes on the other side, because you don't you don't have the software keyboard covering the screen. But there's something that really annoys me is how with the external keyboard connected and typing into a text field, the shortcut bar covers the playback controls of. I think at least in iOS 10 it used to. I'm not sure in iOS 11. I think it still does. Anyway, I constantly I either had to use the hardware pause button on my keyboard or disable the shortcut bar, tap pause, and then tap play again. Anyway, watched 50 videos. I took notes. And then when I had all my notes together, I started, first I removed the filter from the WWDC app just to double check that, yes, I watched all the videos that I wanted to watch. And I caught a couple of videos that I missed, and I was like, what was I thinking? I should be watching this video. So I finished all the sessions. I guess there were 50 or 51. And then for a couple of days, I cleaned up my notes. There were a lot of like duplicate content or duplicate sentences, stuff that I saved, that I think about, but that actually I already put into the app. So I did a cleanup and sort of a basic organization of my notes. Then I installed a beta of iThoughts, my mind mapping app of choice, which is the app that I use every year for outlining my iOS 10 review, iOS review. And this year I took my iOS 10 review template from last year. I have a template because I have a style that I like certain colors, I like certain shapes.
You don't want to be setting that up every year.
So I have a template.
Yeah.
And the change that I made this year is I installed the new San Francisco typeface on iOS. Side note, San Francisco used to be a zip file on the Apple developer website. And I got a lot of, actually, you don't have to go through this process type of tweets on Twitter, because a lot of people assume that San Francisco is still a zip file that contains a few TTF and OTF, whatever, fonts. It's Apple has since switched to an installer package. So what I did is I had to get my MacBook and download the San Francisco package, use an app called Pacifist that lets you inspect the contents of a package, find the directory with the fonts, sync that folder back to iOS, and then I used an app called Found Font, something like that, to install the fonts on iOS 11. Parentheses closed. So what I did is I used the different San Francisco text styles in descending order of size and weight to give a style to my mind map. So the central nodes are heavy and big, and then as you drill down into chapters and sections and subsections and notes, the font gets smaller and the family changes. It's very nice actually. I like it. Anyway, I started bringing over the notes from the Notes app into iThoughts. I used drag and drop, which was amazing. And actually, the process was very, very easy and much faster than in previous years because of drag and drop. No more clipboard, no more Command C, Command V. It's all tactile. It's all, you can touch it, you can swipe and move and drop. It's awesome. And in another couple of days, I basically, during this process of bringing over the notes into the mind map, it may appear to be an extra step and to be clunky, but in practice, it serves as a second layer of cleaning up and thinking about it. Like, now that I'm also moving this information back and forth, do I have any other thoughts right now? Do I really want to talk about this? So it may seem like I'm complicating my life, but in practice, it's a mechanical way of forcing my brain to look at what I wrote and to think about it and to give it some structure. So after 2 days, I had a mind map, and I organized it in chapters. Right now, I have 23 chapters. 23 is my lucky number. If you're a Mac Stories reader, you should maybe go back into the archive of my reviews and stories and see if you can spot all the references to the number 23 you can find. So there's going to be 23 chapters, and what I'm doing is now I'm into the writing process, which I'm using Ulysses this year instead of Scrivener. Mike, feel free to ask questions, or Steven. Otherwise, I'm just going to go on.
I'll let you get through, and then I'll mop up at the end.
Okay. I'm using Ulysses because of the proper Markdown support. I got my custom theme with my custom font going on. I got the integration with Devonthink. I got my workflows. And I have a separate project called iOS 11 Review in Ulysses. Each project contains sheets, and each sheet represents a chapter. And each chapter has sections. In terms of Markdown, this means a chapter is a sheet, and sections inside of a sheet are H2 and H3, H4, H5 headings. I'm going to be using the same overall structure of last year. So there's going to be sides, boxes on the website. There's going to be footnotes. There's going to be galleries. We're doing some new things, but that doesn't matter right now. For every chapter that I complete that I write in Ulysses, I put in a green checkmark emoji into the relevant branch of the mind map.
So
if
pretty.
There's a chapter, it is pretty. If there's a chapter that I don't want to write right now, like the cover sheet, I put in a stop sign, which means don't do this now. I should probably put in the death, the skull emoji for the cover sheet, actually. And what one of the benefits of Ulysses is there's an easier way to do what I used to do in Scrivener with the text highlights. I used to highlight different portions of text to mean different things, like this is a section that you need to double check. Maybe it's a feature or a design detail that is going to change in a future beta. So I'm using the built-in Ulysses features for this. Like there's comments, comment blocks. One of them is the source code, which is in my theme, it's a blue highlight. I'm using that to highlight where I'm going to be dropping images and videos. I'm using all of the features of Ulysses. And the plan is eventually to compile all this project into a single draft and to export it back into editorial, which is where I will be doing my final editing as I do every year. This is the core, let's say, process right now.
All right, so I want to jump back on a couple of little things. So with your iThoughts mind map, do you use the mind map for the entire process, or is there a part of the review where the mind map kind of goes by the wayside?
When the writing is done and every branch is collapsed, every chapter has a green check mark.
Right.
When there's no more stuff to write, the mind map goes away and actually uninstall iThoughts because I don't use it anymore. Yeah.
So
I'm done.
You delete the app. You're like, we're good. We're all good. But this isn't, and that isn't that the review is finished, but you were at that point into editing. Like everything has been written. You don't need the mind map anymore because all the chapters have been written, all the subheadings, all the sub-chapters have been written. And once everything's closed off, it's good. And then you can just go into, I guess, refining and editing mode, right?
Yes, and I like to use editorial for that because, first I need to be able to look at the complete draft in its entirety, not as a separate sheets as in Ulysses. But also I need some of the editorial features like the Markdown automation that I have my workflows in editorial for editing plain text, and I can do folding for chapters, so I can collapse an H2 chapter in Markdown, and I can jump around between chapters using the title bar in editorial. There's like a special pop-up that allows me to jump back and forth between different spots of the review, which when you have like 40,000 something words, it is convenient to be able to fold and jump around.
So, okay. There is a point in the process then when iThoughts goes away and then Ulysses goes away for a little bit because it all moves over into editorial.
Yes.
And that's where the editing is occurring then in editorial.
Yeah. And the editing includes, of course, adding links and adding, images and all the special formatting is important because Ulysses has a very peculiar way of dealing with raw source code or like forward slashes, square brackets, those type of special characters that I use for my special, like the WordPress shortcodes. It's like special syntax that we use at Mac Stories to generate custom layouts. And Ulysses really doesn't like it when you enter those characters. So there's even more reason to switch to editorial, which is pure plain text, pure Markdown, to edit everything together.
Okay. What about, is there anything else editing-wise this year? Like, I know you've been speaking a lot recently about, like, the Apple Pencil and stuff like that, and I know that's something that I do. If I'm writing something that is picky, or if I'm reading something of somebody else's and editing it, I'll turn it into a PDF and use my Apple Pencil in like Notability or something.
So I think there's going to be some pencil usage going on down the road, especially once Apple updates their documentation on the website. And I think I'm going to be downloading a bunch of PDFs and take some notes alongside the PDFs to see if I can spot something or some specific detail that I haven't seen. And I also plan on editing the draft, not just by typing with the keyboard. I'm also going to be doing that, of course, but also I plan on generating an entire PDF and reading it the old school way, like a teacher would grade the paper, like with the pencil, and, you know, to visually hold the pencil and go through the text, through the pages, and mark things with a special color. I think there's a benefit in being able to visualize text and to interact with text in that way. Like, it forces me to think in a more visual manner. And also the fact that, you know, it lets me see the weight of the paragraphs. Like, am I going on for too long here? Should I maybe take a break in this paragraph? Should I structure it differently?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna be using the pencil for that, I think.
It's a nice way to like give a shift, you know, because if you spot something that's wrong, you can't immediately fix it because it's a PDF, right? So like it helps you, I think, take a step back and be in a different mode rather than getting completely bogged down with having to like go in and fix all of that sort of stuff, which is
exactly,
nice,
yeah.
right? I think it's nice.
Yeah.
Are you doing all of this on your iPad Pro? I mean, I figure at some point you're going to load it into Mac Stories, into WordPress, and work with it on the web. Like, when does that start to take place?
So usually that happens towards the end of August, but I want this year to be different because we almost missed the deadline last year. So I have instructed the people who are working with me that the deadline is going to be at least a couple of weeks before publishing the review. So testing the review on Mac Stories is already happening now in some elements. We're already trying some new layout things at the moment, like mid-July. We're already in that process.
It's not like you don't have enough test text, right? Like, you could just load in last year's.
yeah. That's what we're doing now. But yes, I'm doing everything on my iPad Pro. I'm using the iPhone mostly and I know I shouldn't be doing this, but if I'm out, you know, I don't know, I'm shopping, I'm with friends, and, you know, like, even if I don't think about this stuff, right, it's always happening in the background.
Oh yeah, inspiration can strike at any moment. Right?
Yes, and it's like a background, you know, process going on constantly in my brain. And if I think of something like, I don't know, I'm about to, I don't know, I'm grocery shopping, I'm buying pasta, and suddenly I think about drag and drop, you know, and I need to be able to take a note and to say, hey, you know, that's actually a good idea. So I'm using the Notes app, and especially 3D Touch, to say, new note, save something, then when I'm back home later, I'll take care of it, and I'll bring it into the mind map, or I'll put it into the drafting Ulysses. And there's also the opposite approach of, I'm writing something, and as I am typing, I think of something that I want to write next that is not already in the mind map. So I type enter, like return multiple times, create a new line, and I save the idea at the bottom of my current document. So later, when I'm done with all my sections, I see, oh yeah, I had an idea down there. So I should probably take care of that.
What is your backup strategy? I only ask this question because I know it excites Stephen.
So it's a multi-layer strategy. So let's go over all of them. So Ulysses, of course, uses iCloud. Then what I'm doing is I'm compiling the master draft, which basically it's the entire document, and saving it as a MD, I think. It's plain text, to iCloud Drive. So that's the first external backup. Then I'm doing the same for Dropbox. So that's 2. And I'm also archiving each individual chapter as a text file in working copy, which is my GitHub client, where I have a private repo that I share with John and Ryan, and they can look at my drafts, and they're also backed up on GitHub. So I have 3 different online services, plus the Ulysses' own storage in iCloud. So it's 3 plus kind of 1. Is that enough, Steven?
I mean, you're not burning it to CD and keeping it in an underground vault, so you're probably doomed.
Yeah, I should probably have like a physical backup also. But I mean, it's on every single device that I own. So unless like a catastrophe happens,
and other people's devices, right? Like if you're syncing it to the GitHub thing.
I mean, if all my devices are destructed and everybody else's devices are also gone, I think we would have bigger things to worry about than my review.
I don't think you need
fair.
to publish at that point. I think you're all good.
Yeah.
One last question for you, Federico. Is iOS 11 itself making this review easier to write?
To an extent, yes. Especially with the mind map, because I'm testing the beta of iThoughts with some of these features. I would love to have iOS 11 features in Ulysses. They would be perfect right now to be able to drop images into a sheet, like as local attachments. That would be amazing. Or to have proper iOS 11 support in Devonthink. That would be awesome. So for the review itself, and this happens every year, iOS 11 is helping, I would say, 30%, because I cannot use the apps that that are being used for the review. I don't have their iOS 11 versions yet. So what I do is I try to understand iOS 11 by doing other things, such as managing my business, or taking notes for the podcasts, and taxes and email, that kind of stuff. And then I take that knowledge and I use it for the review. But the review process itself is kind of boring. It's basically looking at a mind map in split view and writing on the other side. It's not that fancy. It's I guess it's what is interesting is the multi-step process, but the act of typing itself, it's kind of boring.
All right, so that wraps up this week's episode of Connected. Federico explained very succinctly earlier where you can find our show notes, but I'll take another stab at it. Go to relay.fm/connected/150. I want to take a moment again to send a thanks to our sponsors for this week, Squarespace, FreshBooks, and Pingdom, for supporting the show. You can find Federico's work over at macstories.net, and he is at Viticci, Viticci on Twitter. Stephen is at ISMH, and he writes over at 512pixels.net. You can find me online. I'm at imyke, IMYKE. If you enjoy this show, there may be other Relay FM shows for you. Go to relay.fm/shows and have a look through. I'm sure you'll find something else that will tickle your fancy. We'll be back next week. Until then, say goodbye, guys.
Arrivederci.
Adios.